excited to have you all joining us today for our Courageous Leader series. My name is Katie. I'm the Chief Program Officer at the Chapman Foundation for Caring Communities, and I will be the moderator for the panel today. And also leading with me today is Lainey, who's our Content Quality and Logistics Specialist. She will be serving as our concierge. So if you run into any technical issues, please feel free to find her in the chat. And she will also be tracking questions for our panel as they get entered in as we go throughout the session today. On our call, we're going to do a quick overview of where we're at with the Courageous Leader series, just so you can see what we've already covered and where we're headed today. And then I'll take an opportunity just to introduce you to our three panel members that are here with us. And then the format will be that we'll cover one or two slides, just sharing a little bit of research and information about coaching. And then we will pose a question to all three of our panel members. So we have three questions that we will be asking them all to answer. And then at the end, there will be an opportunity for an open question and answer time. So you are welcome to wait until then to put your question in the chat, but otherwise, as they pop into your mind, just go ahead and drop them in the chat, and Lainey will be collecting them throughout the session today. And then at the very end, we're going to have a little bit of time to really consider some next steps for your organization. So some of you may be coming here today, and it is really fun and exciting just to listen to us all have a conversation around coaching for an hour. But some of you may feel like, I really want to learn more about how I could bring this coaching culture into my team or my organization. So at the end, we'll just kind of give you a couple of links of where you can go to find some additional resources. Now, we recognize that calling in midday in the midst of everything that you just accomplished this morning and everything that you're thinking about that's coming down for the afternoon, it can be tempting to just put us on in the background, maybe catch up on some emails. We would encourage you to be intentional during our hour together today. Be thinking about maybe your current organization or a team that you're working on, maybe even your own motivation for why you wanted to attend this session today. If you are a person that finds it helpful to take notes as you follow along, Lainey's dropping in the chat a thought organizer. It's a great space just for you to jot down some thoughts or some key takeaways from the presenters today, things that you might want to consider taking back to your organization. For those of you who have been following along in the Leader series, we are on session 6. So we spent some time talking about building trust and also leading in an ever-changing world. With things constantly evolving and changing, we as leaders are always walking alongside people throughout the change process. Last month, we had our speaker session on creating a coaching culture and did a little bit of a deeper dive into what that looks like. So today, that's the topic that our panel is going to be covering. It'll be on creating a coaching culture. Now, the three panel members that I'm about to introduce to you are alumni of all three of our foundational courses. So you may hear them reference some things from these classes as they give their responses. All of them have attended our community listens, which really focuses on those skills to communicate in one-to-one interpersonal relationships. Our community serves, where we start talking about how do we develop a service mindset and also service behaviors that can start shifting cultures from me-centric to we-centric. And they also all graduated from our community transforms, either a 3-month or 6-month format, where they really got to learn about how do we take everything from listens and serves and really strategically embed those within our teams and our organizations. So that's part of the background from the course content that they're coming here with today. So first, I would like to introduce you all to Danielle Croning, who is the Senior VP of Member Services for the Capital Credit Union in Wisconsin. Danielle, we're so happy to have you here today.
Thank you, Katie. I'm very happy to be here.
Thank you. We also have Chief Master Sergeant Jody Nitz from the 127th Operations Group, where he serves as the Senior Enlisted Leader in the Michigan Air National Guard. Jody, it's great to be on another call with you.
My honor to be here. Thanks for having me.
And then we also are joined today by Melissa Knight, the Human Resources Director from Pitkin County in Colorado. Melissa, thanks so much for taking the time today.
Of course, excited to be here. Thank you.
So as we start to position for the very first question, I just want to cover two quick slides to make sure that we're all level set on what it is that we're talking about today. So we're going to take a quick side-by-side look at what coaching is and what it is not. When we talk about coaching, we're not talking about us as leaders coming in and giving advice. It's not about us bestowing our wisdom upon other people. It's not about us coming at a coaching arrangement through a position of power or authority or a higher rank. And it's not about us trying to manage or nag at people to get to the end result that we are hoping for. When we're talking about coaching and creating a coaching culture, it's really about us as leaders empowering the people that we lead. And that involves us needing to have a relationship with the person, to use the reflective listening skills. It's kind of more about guiding or facilitating some learning opportunities. And we do that through a combination of powerful questions and also those ever critical reflective listening skills. Now, the reason why coaching is a topic that made it into the Courageous Leader series is because there is a growing amount of research that's showing it's having a huge effect in workplaces. And again, if you want to go back and watch the recording to get additional details on this, we're just pulling out a couple of quick highlights for the purpose of this panel. We're seeing that when coaching cultures exist, we're experiencing reduced turnover and increased employee engagement. It's also showing some improved productivity, not only for the individual, but for the team and the organization as a whole. So not only are your team members starting to feel better about their work experience, they're also producing better work, which makes it seem like a critically important topic for us to make sure we cover when we talk about leadership development. So our first question for the panel is, what led you down the path of wanting to incorporate more coaching in your organization? We're kind of starting from the beginning. Danielle, why don't we go ahead and start with you?
Yeah, I've always had coaching in my leadership toolbox, I guess I should say. But it's interesting after going through the listens, the transforms, the different classes, I think back to go, well, what kind of quality of coaching was I doing? So it's exciting to now start to know that the quality of coaching has gone to a whole nother level. With our credit union, we have a value of relationships and results. So obviously, we try to nurture and grow relationships while working together to achieve a desired goal. So insert coaching, right? Because that's what we do when we are coaching is we're really trying to work on that development piece, that engagement piece. The purpose is to set those clear goals and knowing that's what we're doing with the coaching, as well as encouraging just those really good conversations. And, as we kind of talk about some other things throughout the class, it just really has stepped up that employee engagement and we've really seen, the buy-in doing the coaching. So it just really brings a whole new quality to the conversations and that relationship that you're building with your team members.
That's great. I love, Danielle, how you're focusing on it's not just about people or just about performance. Coaching is a way to kind of bring those two along side by side.
Yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely.
Jody, how about you for this question?
When I first saw this question, I thought about a conversation I had with the team in the Guard after the listens course. And I always thought I was a good coach. And then I had a really young airman just speak up and said, Chief, you really don't let us do our own thing. You end up taking over and you're going to do it your own way anyway. So she was really vulnerable and brave enough to say that to me. And I thought back, you know what? I wasn't really empowering them. I wasn't, letting them be engaged. And that's really what they wanted, So by listening to them, you understood that, we're in a volunteer force, right? People don't have to be there, right? They volunteer to be there in the Air Guard. So I think I found out, after listening that I was sort of missing the mark of ensuring I'm empowering those underneath me and even those I work with or those above me to want to stay in and really feel engaged and enjoy what they do. So I think you almost have to lean into the team dynamic of just letting them fail. And I think sometimes as leaders, we try to provide top cover and not let them fail, but there's a lot of value into failing and again building the relationships as you go and not solving their problems. Let them work through it on their own and you know develop that sense of accomplishment.
Jody, thank you so much for being willing to share that and for your openness to receiving feedback. I imagine that for all of us, when we have those moments of someone saying, hey, the way you're leading is maybe not matching up to how you want to be showing up, those can be great learning moments. So thank you. Melissa, let's turn it over to you.
Sure. Well, when I think about, our path to coaching, just to let you all know, we just started kicking off coaching. So we're, at the beginning stages of it. But as, we thought back over the past couple of years, post-COVID, when we were coming out of it, we did a lot of listening sessions across our organization with our senior leadership. And there were a couple themes that we heard. One of them was, there was this lack of connection and there was siloing happening across the organization. And the other thing really was around people wanted to be recognized for their contributions that they were, giving to the organization. So we are in local government, and it's very typical in local government to form task force, whether it's internally or externally in the community, to solve problems. So what we did was we brought a task force together of employees from across the organization. We had a couple of folks who are on the HR team lead that task force, and they really spent about 10 months diving into how we used to do pay for performance with annual performance reviews. They did surveys with current employees. Really, what do employees want out of a performance review process? What do they want out of growth and development? What does that mean to them? This task force then came to our senior leadership team and presented. And between what they had come up with information from the organization and really our culture and where our senior leadership wanted to take it, we then merged ideas, and really coaching was the answer, for where we wanted to go. Now it's, definitely there's a gap between where we were and, where we're going. But, working with Chapman Foundation really has allowed us to, use their expertise in terms of coaching. So we actually just kicked it off yesterday, and we're transitioning to twice a year connection sessions, and really teaching folks how to coach. It's going to be a road ahead of us, but we're really, really excited because we are really looking at this as not from a supervisor or a manager standpoint to an employee, but also from a colleague to a colleague, and more constructive conversations and relationships could grow through that coaching. And I think that's it. So yeah, we're excited to go down this path and see where it ends up.
Thank you, Melissa. It's exciting to see how you're not only taking the skills back, but really embedding it right into the processes of your organization. That goes such a long way in setting people up for success. Thank you. And Melissa, you also made a great point too about when coaching is utilized, because I think we do often think of it from a supervisor to the person that you're leading, but really the concepts around coaching and that interaction can take place regardless of what your position is, and it can take place both at work and in your community and in your households. So like so many of the other skills that we talk about, there are a lot of different benefits to being able to bring this into those places. Now, as we move on, one of the really important components of coaching is having a coaching mindset. If you go through all of the robotic motions of asking the coaching questions and going through the process, but you don't genuinely look at people from a sense of them being whole and able to come to their own solutions, it's not going to come across as authentic. This quote from Coactive Coaching talks about how coaching is always grounded in the belief that people are naturally creative, resourceful, and whole. People are capable, have their own answers, and are not in need of fixing. This is the mindset portion that we talked about in our coaching session last month, because the way that we think converts into the way that we lead. And so this is an area that we covered previously, and we matched that with coaching behaviors. So we have the mindset, and now we look at the behaviors. And we talked in greater detail about 3 different coaching behaviors. One is the reflective listening component, and that requires us as leaders to be fully present, not thinking about the meeting we just came from or the email that we need to respond to. It requires us in that space, if we're truly listening, to be setting aside our judgment or that really great piece of advice we want to sneak in there. Because when we really are intentional with our listening, that's when we can start to uncover those underlying needs and values. Why is that person behaving the way that they are, reacting the way that they are, or forming the opinion that they are? All of that can come out just with using those reflective listening skills. But we also talk about how within coaching, sometimes you need to come up with some powerful questions, typically starting with what or how, to expand our thinking a little bit, to look at things creatively or shift perspectives. And then the other critical, important piece of coaching behaviors is forwarding the action and learning of the other. So if you have this great session with a person, you're listening, you're learning so many beautiful things about them, but then you leave that call or that meeting and they don't have a next step or an action item or something they're going to be holding themselves accountable to, then it wasn't coaching, it was just a really nice conversation. So really keeping in mind that that action component is present in coaching sessions. So with that reminder of what we covered last month, let's open up another question to our panel. Because coaching starts with this mindset about people and then followed by key behaviors in order to guide them. How did you begin to embed these skills into your organization? And Jody, if you don't mind, I'll have you answer this one first.
Yeah, it's not easy, especially when you talk about the Air National Guard. We have components of full-time members that work out there every day. We've got drill status guardsmen that come out just a couple of days a month. So trying to develop relationships and build a team. And a lot of our squadrons and groups and different sections in the military have, just like Melissa said, we have these silos of teams, and I think what I found, whether it was in my previous medical squadron or where I'm at now, is people really stuck to their silos and they didn't collaborate a lot and even build relationships between members. So I think after, and I guess if you take the word silo and you sort of compare it to sort of the SERVS curriculum in we versus me, it's the same thing. You had silos that were just focused on their mission and their mission alone, and then versus the we centric thing is like, hey, we're a whole team. Like we have 5 or 6 different sections in our group, but they all need to collectively work together to get the mission done. And I think we were missing that. So I think after SERVS, we started having more team-based meetings with the NCOs in charge of each section, and I thought it was unique. You started having a meeting, and I tried not to facilitate it as much. I just sort of guided the conversation, and what I found is after having that multiple months in a row, the first couple were awkward. Then after that, they all got to know each other. And we would get in and we would just start talking about life and how the work was going, how home life was going, and you would just sit back and they were just talking about things and connecting, which I found that it made it easier for them to talk about work at the back end of the meeting. So and it helped to break down the silos is what I've seen. Is it perfect still? No, it's a work in progress to shift the culture. But I think trying to break down them silos ends up getting the mission done quicker. So, focus on the people, let them build the relationships, and they'll get the work done even faster.
Jody, if you do find that perfect solution where we don't have to keep being a work in progress, please get back to us. We would love to hear that. Thank you for acknowledging just the humanness piece in that, right? The idea of how are we creating space for people to really be connected, building that trust together as a team, and how that can convert into people actually being more productive. Thank you. Melissa, how about this question for you?
Sure. I mean, I agree with everything Jody said. You know, a lot of it has been, you know, conversations. But as I mentioned before, you know, for us, it was also a little bit of a look back, in putting ourselves in employees' shoes, because the one thing that we often heard when that annual performance review came around was people had anxiety. They were really nervous. They didn't want to go into a conversation with their manager. And, you know, some departments have that experience and some don't. So that just didn't feel like it was part of our culture. Um, so having a lot of the conversations and really start to shift the ideas, like Jody said, I mean, we are, you know, on the beginning kind of steps of this whole process. But I'm really, really excited because I think it is going to create more connections here. And I think some people are going to do great at it. Some people are going to have lots of training and also still feel really, really, really uncomfortable. But that's okay, because we just want to provide employees and supervisors with support. So we'll be doing lots of follow-up with them. And, you know, hopefully after a couple rounds of this, these will become more natural. And then the thing too, I just want to mention is the forward looking of coaching is really what we were missing. You know, performance reviews are always about the look back. And this is really about looking forward and how we can help employees stay engaged, help them continue to grow and develop, help them experience different departments across our organization. We're small, but we have 27 different business units in county government that we support. So there's lots of opportunities. And I think, yeah, that's it.
Great. Thank you so much, Melissa. And I'm hearing that common theme of it's just something we keep working on and keep supporting people and in the development of those skills. Danielle, how about you?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is being intentional. So we do monthly coaching sessions where we meet with our individuals. We do that organizational across the board. Some areas actually, depending, like for me, I have a couple people that I actually meet weekly, just because it's so important that we touch base, because we don't want those conversations to be scary. Like Jody and Melissa mentioned, like we want it to be natural. People feel like, hey, I'm not going to be like, I'm not in trouble. Nothing's wrong. Like, this is a good, positive thing, right? We're trying to communicate. But I will say, going through the listens and the serves and the transforms, the powerful questions, I feel like that was a big piece of starting this process, is building in like the how and the what, and planning. So, not just going to these meetings and just being like, we're just going to wing it. We're just going to see what happens. So have some intentional plan of what you want to accomplish, and then practice. I mean, that is the biggest thing, because if you don't do it, you lose it. And one other just quick thing is celebrate those quick wins. So when we talk about the coaching and we're talking about different things that we're working on, is really remembering, like, what are those quick wins that people can get excited about and go, oh yeah, there's value to these conversations and things are happening because of them. So
Danielle, thank you. And I appreciate you mentioning those powerful questions again. We've had a lot of alumni who've said they just print that sheet off and carry it around with them, or have it sitting next to their phone in case they need to have a phone call. Lainey, I don't know if we would have time today, but if you're able to drop a list of those powerful questions in the chat as a tool or a resource for people, that could be a great starting point if you're unfamiliar with powerful questions. All right, I'm going to go ahead and move us forward then when we talk about the purpose of coaching. So really focusing on why it is that we consider doing this, or what circumstances would we utilize some of these coaching skills. Sometimes it's because we're trying to gain some deeper insight or clarity. And that can be twofold. One, it can be you as a leader trying to better understand the person that you are coaching, or kind of what makes them tick or what motivates them, how they are making decisions, their thought processes. but it also benefits the person that you're coaching because they start to raise their emotional intelligence and social awareness because they start to be able to articulate why they've gotten to the conclusion that they're at. What is it about this decision that is really appealing to them? So you're continuing to invest, as Jody mentioned earlier, it's a great way to empower the people that you lead. It also can be beneficial to use coaching when you might need to shift a perspective. Sometimes we just feel stuck, right? We keep seeing this relationship with a colleague the exact same way. We keep running into the same challenge at work. And coaching can be a way to just get us to look at the situation or the relationship through a little bit of a different lens. We also talk more related to the action component that you can utilize coaching when you're trying to set some really clear goals and begin developing that accountability mindset, right? You walk away from that coaching session with a really clear action that's going to take place and how the person's going to be holding themselves accountable. So it continues to help support that movement coaching. Now, as we coach, we tend to be impacted ourselves as individuals and also start to see the impact on the people that we're doing coaching with. So the question for the panel is, what has changed as a result of your focus on coaching mindsets and behaviors? And if you're willing to, we'd love to hear you speak to both what you've seen shift for you as an individual and your team or organization. So for this one, Melissa, if you don't mind kicking us off, that would be great.
Sure. So, I mean, for myself, I feel fortunate that I've been able to go through our community transforms, because that is really for me where the rubber hit the road. And I'll just ditto what Danielle said about powerful questions. I mean, that was probably the biggest takeaway, in order to, I think, just getting deeper with folks and really sort of getting curious about, what they want to do and how they want their careers to look like here. So that has been really, really helpful. And in human resources, we tend to maybe be ahead of a few other departments, with some of these skills. So we've been practicing this on our HR team for some time now, which is really exciting. For the organization, I think this is going to take some time. I think just like with any change initiatives, we're going to have those early adopters and they're just going to be gung-ho and excited, and our cheerleaders, and there's going to be that group that is just, can't wait till the next connection session. Then we're going to have that middle group that is sort of like, why do we need to do that? I don't need to, know about that. I'm going to be retiring in 2 years, and whatever the situation is. And then we're probably going to have a few folks that will really resist it. And I think that's okay. I think their time will come as they start to see other folks in the organization maybe have opportunities, or, accountability starts changing across the board, because that's one area that we're working on as well. And really just trying to, meet people where they are as we bring them through this journey, because it's not really a one and done. This is going to be, a cultural shift for us and something that we're going to commit to. So.
I love it. And I appreciate, Melissa, your recognition of everybody coming at this from a different perspective and maybe a different excitement level. Thank you. Danielle.
Yeah, for me, I go back to the transforms class as well, because that was really an empowering kind of class, I feel. And for me, it was understanding my values and then considering how that plays a factor in the decisions and my day-to-day actions, and just how I'm interacting with my team members, and getting my mind right, and clearing the whiteboard, right? That was something that always sticks with me, is being present and making sure I'm paying attention and not getting ahead of the conversation. And also allowing me to focus on when I see emotions rising versus, is this the right time to have that coaching session and talk through this scenario, because maybe they're not in the right mindset. So really watching for those types of things as well. So we're both in the right space to have a conversation if we need to. But I would say for my team, this has led to just deeper, more valuable conversations. And it's been fun to watch, your team members kind of dig into their own thought process when you're asking those questions and asking them to share more, that they wouldn't normally have gone that deep in the thought process and actually have the answer maybe they didn't realize. So that's been really exciting. But even with the coaching, it's, the team looks forward to those meetings, and, they do find value eventually. Melissa's just starting that venture, but, it's fun to watch people that are like, that's my time. Like, I want to be able to sit down and that's my time for us to talk. And, they get really excited about that. So that was always fun. And that's what I get excited about too.
I love that. Thank you, Danielle. And I love the reminder too that coaching is most effective when the person is not experiencing a ton of emotions. So you being able to really be in tune to what their experience is when you see that heightened emotion, that's when we always want to rock back and do those reflective listening skills until they kind of get back in that place of balance. Thank you so much. Jody, I'm going to have you respond to this question, and then we'll go ahead and turn to the chat and open it up for general Q&A. So if you've been holding on to questions in your head, please go ahead and drop those in the chat for Lainey. And Jody, go ahead and wrap us up here on this question.
I think I'm going to tie both of them bullet, what has changed, for me or the team of the organization. I think if I just go back to what, the slide of what coaching isn't and what coaching is, and that, to me, it all goes back to now, and I see it more clearly as, it all starts with building relationships. So you can't really, build a coaching culture if you don't start with relationships. So from day one that a new airman comes in the door, it's a matter of just sitting with them and having human conversations, because you can't really move forward to reflectively listening and empowering others and all that stuff if you just don't know them to their heart, because they're not going to want to come to you and talk to you. And the same thing with their colleagues and their peers. So I really think that's key there. And using the powerful questions too. I mean, it's stuck right on in my office, right on the wall, and I pull it off of there and I grab it and I look at it before I have conversations with folks to get them talking more, to know who they are, and really starting to shift, like you said, perspectives away from, in the military, our budgets are always constrained. We're trying to do more with less. And I think I've come to the realization is if we focus on the people first, the task will get done. So I think that's really the key. And, going back to, most people quit their boss. And I mean, I still see it to this day, people quitting their supervisor, and it's really because they don't know each other. And, this last drill, we didn't have a lot to do because most of our team is gone right now. So we sat down with about 30 of us and just, we had a get to know each other session. And we talked about, acceptance versus agreement, and different lenses and shifting perspectives. And, after, 30 minutes of great conversation on that, at the end, we asked them to explain one thing that others don't know about them. And it was funny how the conversation just blew up. And then after, you see them in the hallway and they're talking about different things. So I really think that's key, whether it's for myself as a leader or for the team, is we have to really step away from the computer and the emails and all our tasks and get to know each other on the human level, because that's where it all begins and ends, is with human interaction.
It's exciting to hear, Jody, how you're building such strong connections for people. And I think acknowledging that time constraint too, right? It takes time to really get to know people and to learn more about them at that deeper level. All right, we are officially at the open Q&A time. Lainey, I want to pause first. Are there any questions that already came into the chat?
Yes, it looks like we've got one question from Stephanie. She asked, what is your biggest challenge as a coach?
Well, Katie just touched on it. It's time. Everything relates back to time. And, if we want to do it right, it takes time. And, whether it's listening or empowering others, just sitting with them, it takes time, and everybody's constrained. So that's the biggest struggle, especially in the Guard, having the mixture of full-time versus part-time employees. And and trying to build teams when you have mixtures of statuses.
Yeah, I would agree with Jody. But also for me personally, I find it's just being present. There's so many distractors that happen in a day. You know, when you do find the time, it's committing to that time. So not worrying about the dinging on your computer when you got emails and messages and your phone vibrating because that's going off. And you know, thinking about what you have to do for your next meeting. And so really just taking that time to focus on the person that you're talking to and making them feel valuable in that moment.
Thank you, Danielle. Melissa, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, I'm going to go a little different direction. And I'm opening myself up here for vulnerability, but for me, it's advice giving. When I'm coaching, I just want to get in there and give people my ideas. And so I'm really trying to work on quieting my mind and, and just being, I guess, present, but also really just letting the other person do the talking and the thinking and the processing. So that's my biggest challenge.
That moment, Melissa, where we feel like we've got such a clear answer or a really helpful thing to share. That's a big challenge. Lainey, do we have any other questions in the chat right now?
There aren't any other questions right now.
Okay. I'm wondering if as people are thinking of some extra questions, I probably should have had you do this at the beginning, but would all three of you mind just talking about kind of the size of your organization, just so people have some context around how it is that you're choosing to bring these coaching skills in? Maybe I'll help navigate this, Danielle, if you don't mind going first on this one, and then we'll go Melissa and then Jody.
Yeah, absolutely. So our credit union has, I think, about 475 employees, and we're committed to the caring workplace, and we are actually bringing a lot of this into our workforce. And we've had probably over 100 of our employees go through some of the classes as far as the listening, the serves, the transforms. But as an organization, we're all kind of committing to focus on the coaching and using the skills that we're learning in those classes to have those valuable conversations and just really making sure that we're focusing on our team members and making them feel valued, you know, and helping them grow and doing that honestly and with open mind and, you know, being present and committing the time and all the other things that fall under that umbrella. So.
In Pickens County, we have about 375 full-time employees. And I mentioned 27 different business units. So we run the jail to the airport, to the landfill, to public health. So very diverse group of services that we offer.
As far as is our base, you know, we have maybe around 1,500 members on the base. As far as the group that I work for, maybe right around 100 personnel. But again, we all sort of are intermingled and entangled in sort of the same mission per se.
Thank you, Jody. Lady, I think I saw another little alert pop up. Do we have another question in there?
Yes, let's see. Bumble asked, what is your preferred way to start a coach session? Scheduled, spur of the moment, open door policy?
All of the above. Is that an answer? I feel like there's a place for all of them. Personally, for me, I do like to schedule reoccurring meetings on my calendar and their calendar, just so we all have committed time and we know when that time is. Now, you know, life happens, so we end up moving some of them, canceling some of them. But then the spur of the moment happens because, again, going back to the life happens, situations come up, and you know, you don't want to sit on things again based on emotion and what's happening. You'd have to evaluate. But I do also encourage my team members to reach out at any point to me if they feel like they need to have a moment of my time and have a coaching session per se, or just have a conversation about something. So yeah, all of the above for me.
Thank you, Danielle. Melissa or Jody, do you have a preferred way?
I would probably go with what Danielle said as well. I mean, we're definitely going to have those 2 formal sessions twice a year. But I also find sometimes just popping into someone's office and just saying, hey, do you have a few minutes? I want to talk to you about something is also kind of takes the stress off. But I guess knowing that you're maybe prepared in some way so you're not fumbling over either feedback or coaching that you're doing in that moment. But I mean, I guess the more connections we could have with our folks, the better.
Yeah, again, it starts with relationships. So, I mean, really, coaching can happen at any point in time, but I think there's value to, and I think something I feel at from time wise is, President Lincoln always talked about management by walking around. So go visiting folks in their space, and I think that's a tough one. But I think when you head to their workspace, you can pick up on a lot of different nonverbals and different things, and that leads to other conversations. And it's, again, just knowing that you're present, just like Danielle said, but really any of those. But again, once the relationships are built, then when you talk about an open door policy, then there's people coming to your door, whether it's people that work directly for me or under me or work for a different squadron. You end up finding people showing up at your door more because you've built relationships.
Katie, can I just add, so, with what Jody was talking about, the relationships, I think that adds to like not having those conversations be scary. And someone's like, you think about like a coaching session and people like get the sweats and clam up because they're like, oh gosh, it's always negative. But it doesn't have to be negative, right? It could be positive, it could be growing, it could be anything. So, once you have those relationships, people don't get worried about that. They find it very like exciting and going, this is part of my growth opportunity or my development. And it's part of the natural process.
It's almost like built into the expectations or kind of the normal rhythm of the workday. We did have one question that came in and just a direct message. For people on the call that might be looking for like, what do I do next? What concrete steps could I take right now to begin implementing a coaching culture or becoming a better coach? So for those of us that like the real tangible.
Thank Katie. Someone I think just put in the chat, but there's a couple of book recommendations. One of them is The Coaching Habit, which I have read, which I thought was a really quick read for those of us who don't have a lot of time. And also some really good just takeaway skills that you could implement right away. And this one is really simple, but one of the skills in there is the question, tell me more. And just having like a door opener like that is, what they're referred to in OCL, but, just really being there and listening. That's the one thing that I think would help. The other thing for us is leadership buy-in. I mean, it really, really, really starts at the top, I think, with most things. So really having the support, we have the support of our county manager and our deputy county managers, and work very closely with them. So it's really also making sure that they're on board.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with Melissa on that. I would also say, first step, I would schedule time. Like Jody said, it's so hard to find time in everybody's schedule. So find time that you can commit to. But then just start even asking, where are you at today? How are you feeling? We have like a thriving, a surviving, so we have like a little gauge that we can ask people, where are you at right now with workload, with what you have going on in life? And just kind of going through some basic questions. And then, like Melissa said, digging into that tell me more, and have them kind of start that path of digging into it a little bit. But that powerful question handout, it has some really great examples of just open-ended questions to have people start a conversation that you can kind of lead with.
Yeah, you know what, I was thinking internally on this question, like, so whether you've been in a long-term team or you just got put into a new team as a leader, I think, again, it starts with relationships. And sometimes we assume that we have good relationships and maybe we know our colleagues or know our folks, but when you truly sit down with them, like I had mentioned something in one of these team meetings trying to break down silos of like, hey, I want you to do this particular get to know your activity with each one of your airmen that worked with you. Uh, we called it a airman comprehensive assessment, which is just basically a tool to facilitate a conversation on the human level. And when I asked that to them, they're like, well, can you do one on us? And I'm
Mm.
like, I never thought of it that way, because they're like, well, we've never had one done on us ever. And I'm like, well, that's sad. And I think whether you're new to a team or you've been on a team a long time, there's something to be said about just stepping back and starting over. So I think there's a lot of value to that. And again, all that is a tool that we use in the military to build relationships, which in turn helps with our other forms, which is like our annual or semi-annual evals, which everybody fears because it was just work. And we're trying to transition them in the military to be more useful versus a tool that everybody hated. Like, hey, this is a valuable conversation between a supervisor and a subordinate, and it should just be a conversation about how they've been doing and what does that supervisor need to do to support them, and what are their aspirations. So I don't know. Again, it all begins and ends with relationships.
Yeah, and Jody, I appreciate the reminder about even with long existing teams. And it's a great reminder that the people that you lead change and they evolve. And so what was most motivating for them last year or that project they were really excited about might not be the same answer that they would give the next year. And just keeping that in mind, I think is a great reminder. So thank you. Lainey, I think we had another one pop into the chat if you don't mind reading it.
Sure. So Tony asked, does anyone have a structured approach when having a scheduled coaching session?
We do. We have, I talked about the relationships and results. So we call it our R2 form. It's kind of like our check-in form that we use as kind of a starting off point. It asks, like I said, how are you feeling today is, the thriving, surviving kind of thing. What things are you struggling with this month, this week? What have been really big successes for you? So it just kind of goes through some questions as far as starting the conversation. And then from there, it just kind of, where does it take you? You kind of start digging into maybe a certain direction based on one of those answers. And sometimes it's, hey, everything's going awesome. Cool. What do you got going on this weekend? And then it's just more of that, getting to know you and, kind of a concept too. So.
Tony, I appreciate that question. Just for I'm a primary D or direct person, so I always like structure. I even like a C. But I guess when you start to break it down, you know, my mind says I want to answer this yes, but really it depends on the person that you're talking to and how that's guided. And I mean, we're taught that in listens, everybody's going to take things differently. Their behavioral tendencies different. I'm going to come across different depending on my behavioral tendencies. So is there a structured approach? I would say yes in a way, but really it's going to bend and flex depending on my tendencies, the person I'm talking to, and if I need to flex to them at that particular moment, and keeping in mind the whole emotion logic bubble and all that, how it starts, and it's going to shift the conversation is going to shift. And I think you take it as it goes.
I appreciate this too, Tony, because I like things in boxes and things that fit neatly into places. So while we're not super structured at Pickens County, we are rolling out a little bit more of a structured coaching connection sessions. They're going to be starting in September, because we just want to give folks the framework, at least at the beginning, to help make them feel confident as they're going into these conversations. So it's going to be very simple, and happy to share these with CFCC to share with you all. But it's really just 3 questions. How is your work-life balance right now? Quality of life is really, really important to us living up in the mountains in Colorado, because people move here to do things outside. We don't necessarily move here to climb a career ladder. So that's really, really important to us. The second thing is just around contributions that you're making to the organization, to your team, to a project, whatever that may look like. And then the third question is really that forward focused. So what are you going to do to close any gaps? I don't think that's exactly the question, but something along those lines, in order to have some sort of plan to move forward for this to then be successful.
Thank you all for sharing that. And it does make me think that I should call attention to the fact that there are many programs out there where you can actually become like a certified coach. That's hours and hours and hours of study and training and real life practice with clients and a whole process. And what we were referring to in the session last month and in here is really, even if you're not a certified coach, how do you start to bring in some of those coaching skills so that your team can start benefiting from this coaching culture? So there are a variety of different coaching frameworks that are out there in the practice of coaching. In our Transforms program, we cover 3. We talk about kind of how do you have a general open coaching session of just exploration. We talk about scale coaching. How do you move someone when they feel kind of stuck in an area that they're needing to grow in? And then ownership coaching. And that one is really very nuanced. It requires a very high level of relationship trust, because you're helping someone to start increasing their sense of ownership and kind of that accountability mindset. So those are just 3 sample frameworks that we talk about more in depth in the program. Lainey, I want to pause here. I'm keeping an eye on time too, but are there any final questions in the chat before I move us forward?
No other questions, but another great book recommendation, Humble Inquiry, The Gentle Art of Asking Instead of Telling, by Edgar Sheen.
Thank you for sharing that. I feel like we need to go back through the chat to pull out all of the great titles in there that people have been sharing. Thank you. As we kind of come to the close on this part of the Q&A, those of you who've been attending the series, this is becoming a very familiar section for you, because with everything, we really want to focus on me, we, and us. And that on the left-hand side ties to the 3 foundational courses, but it also applies to what we're trying to do through the coaching skills that are taught or woven through these programs. In order to have that coaching mindset and behavior, the me part is really understanding, what's my approach to coaching? What are the things that get in the way of my ability to show up as a coach? So you're raising that self-awareness. The we is when we start taking the opportunity to utilize these coaching mindsets and skill sets within our teams, within our families, and our communities. And then the us component is, how do we take that to an even broader level so that the reach of this coaching format, where we are just showing up and, to Jody's point, just focusing on the human part of building relationships with people. So for those of you who got done and are just like, panel was great, I'm all set, that's absolutely wonderful. Glad you were here. For those of you who are like, I'd love to learn how to bring some of these coaching skills and trainings into our organization, or to learn more about some of the programs that your panelists have talked about today, go ahead and click on the QR code. Lainey, I'm sure you're rolling your eyes at me. Go ahead and scan the QR code, or Lainey can drop a link in the chat. There'll be an opportunity at the end of the survey just to say that you would like some follow-up. And as always, we'd encourage you to come to the next Courageous Leader series, which will be in your follow-up email. But a huge thank you and round of applause to our 3 panel members today for joining us and just sharing your insights. I've really enjoyed being able to learn from all of you. And with that, we will wrap up our session. So please feel free to log off, and we will hopefully see you all on the next one. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.